find this hilarious because Spain is an absolutely pussified country. And the reason I'm saying this is because feminists are allowed to go unchallenged. Now, you have to understand, it's not that people have decided to allow feminists to do something. No. It's that feminists were actually smart and they dedicated time and resources in order to push their ideology. And one way they do it is by using the lawfare system. They knew how the law works. They used the judicial system in order to gain power. And then they also did activism and got politicians that sided with them to be elected. And so now you have Spain absolutely dominated by feminists. Now, you would wonder, okay, so why is that a bad thing? Like, why do men have to be in charge, right? Like, why can't women be in charge? Well, the thing isn't about who is in charge. The thing is, like, should there be an ideology that gets absolutely no backlash, that gets absolutely no criticism, that gets absolutely no quality control? The answer is no, because if you actually allow a single ideology to dominate like that, you end up with those people eventually getting completely disconnected from reality. They start saying batshit insane crazy stuff because like no one is going to push against it. This is why you end up with retarded nonsense such as all men are rapists. It's because a woman that says that has absolutely no consequence happening to her. Whether if a man would say something about all women, immediately he would be accused of prejudice. He would have people on social media digging through his stuff, trying to get him fired, right? Like when you allow feminism to become the dominant ideology, you also end up with censorship. You end up with crazy people saying that jokes are actually extremely serious and sincere, and that anyone that makes a joke should be fired. You end up with book burning, which is literally what we're seeing here. And it's very interesting because after decades of associating book burnings with the Nazis, you now have the feminists demanding book burnings. Now, obviously, you know, we're not doing it the same way that we used to do it in the Reich, where the books had to physically be burned in order for the information to be lost. But what they're advocating here is for the books to be unable to be sold. And so the people that actually want to read that literature should not be able to. And this is an example, right? You have this book on submissive wives, which is now becoming a hit in Spain. Now, notice how the book is not actually being pushed into schools. Notice how the book is not mandatory reading. Notice how, like, Hollywood isn't bombarded in order to make movies after this book. It's just a book that exists, right? Now, why is it that feminists are absolutely upset about it? Well, the reason is that feminism as an ideology gets its legitimacy from the idea that they are protecting women's interests. And what happens when what feminist claims and what women want are completely different? Well, what happens is that feminist loses legitimacy, which means that the donations dries up, which means that people may start talking against them, which means that they get to lose cultural influence. And so the reason this book has to be banned is not because it encourages domestic violence, as the activists claim. It's because it actually depowers the legitimacy of the activist. If feminists claim that women want to be girl bosses and that women actually want to suck the corporate dick, but what it happens in reality is that women buy a book en masse that is about turning women into submissive housewives, well, then the feminists are shown to be completely disconnected from reality. Now, this is dangerous because usually activists use manipulated studies or polls or other things in order to justify their activism. But you can't really manipulate the sales of a book, especially when the book is not being pushed by corporations. No one is forced to buy it. It simply happens to exist, and women just buy the book. And this is why the feminists are freaking the fuck out. So as you can see, the book is actually written by an Italian, by Archbishop Francisco Javier Martinez, who chose to publish it and defended its content and insists that this is ridiculous and hypocritical in a society that allows abortion, which he argues is a much clearer example of violence against women, because obviously, you know, like some women can be aborted, to not allow a book that apparently was written after some saint. Let me see exactly what the name of the saint is. Here we go. It's by St. Paul, right? And so, like, the ill-minded senoritas gathered up and tore the book, right, in a protest, which, again, it's literally modern book burning, right? Like, just because they didn't have a barrel burning it because it's probably illegal based on European regulation about carbon emissions to do that, doesn't mean that if they were able to safely book burn, they wouldn't have done it. So they did the next best thing, right? Like, they tore it up. Now, what's interesting is that what I find about the book is nothing that contradicts my lived experiences, and it reinforces my prejudices about gender, which happens to be real. Like, just because it's a prejudice doesn't mean it's fake. See, feminists say that society teaches us that women should be dominated. And it's true. Like, I'll even explain how society taught me. It wasn't because of books. It wasn't because of movies. It wasn't because of TV shows. It wasn't even about what's happening in my house. The moment my balls dropped and I became a teenager, I got interested in girls. And so I started looking around. And I noticed that, well, there are some girls that have this thing attached to them called a boyfriend. And everywhere I looked, I noticed that the girls weren't girl bosses with their boyfriend. The ones that loved their boyfriend and had long relationships had this submissive behavior towards the boyfriend. Now, it wasn't a submission that, felt force. Like, it wasn't like society or anyone forced them to submit. I generally think that submitting them made them horny. I think, like, they have a fetish for submitting. I think they get off on it. Now, there are guys that also get off on being submissive to women. And what I've noticed is that they actually have a high difficulty in finding a girlfriend because it didn't match up. Right? Like, women, they wanted to be submitted. And when they found another guy that was also submitted, they weren't interested in him. Now, of course, there were exceptions, right? But, like, overwhelmingly, like, from my experience looking around me, over the 70% of cases that I've seen of couples forming and being together, yes, like, the man happened to be dominant. And then I looked at my friend's family, right? And we came from a communist society that preached equality and feminism. And it seems to be the case everywhere. And so, I gotta say, it's like, no, I don't need a fucking book in order to understand, like, what women like. And at the end of the day, women don't need a book either. Like, women actually have the ability of seeking a person that they like, right? Like, we don't do arranged marriages anymore. In Europe, at least. And so, like, women, if they genuinely wanted a little puppy, right? If they want a little dog, they can actually find a guy like that. Like, there's nothing stopping them from hooking up with a guy that is submissive, right? Because dominance and submissive is relative. Like, I can be a dominant person, but, like, I'm pretty sure there are other people out there that would socially dominate me, just like I can socially dominate others. This is normal, right? And so, like, if you're interested in a relationship where you want to be dominant, like, you're going to seek a person that wants to be submissive. The opposite is also true. And so, like, I don't understand the harm that this book does simply by existing, except for the fact that it delegitimizes feminist activists by showing them that, no, actually, what you're preaching and what women want is completely different. And we notice what women want because they're actually spending their money on it. And so, yes, this is why they're now advocating for this book to be banned. I hope they succeed. I hope they actually become the oppressors of women so that women can see what their activists genuinely care about, right? Because men aren't probably the ones reading this book. Let's be honest, right? Like, this book is dedicated for the senoritas. And when senorita wants to buy a book and she is told, no, you can't buy it because these other senoritas are telling you no, I'm pretty sure that senorita is going to end up with opinions. So again, I hope they ban the book. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, we'll see each other in the comment section. Take care.